like 296 degrees Kelvin outside. That's actually quite comfortable.
Well, that was random. Exceptional radio.
Yeah, it's like peak summer, and it's not even sure what the temperature that is in normal range.
Yeah, it's been fairly mild so
77 degrees. We're getting a bunch of rain from somewhere.
I wonder how much of it's like remnants of Beryl.
It's probably what it
Because
is.
that kind of seemed to stick around and just cause a bunch of storms. I know it's been like over a week, but
Funny how that's
like,
not even really in the news.
Yeah. Like there was a while where Houston, I think there was still parts of Houston that didn't have power back, and it just wasn't even news anymore. Because I remember somebody,
One of my friends is down there, and they didn't have power for 4 days after Beryl landed. But
yeah, some places I think it was up to like 7 or 8 even. But then you get these like doomsday people where you're like, well, not you, but they're like, oh, if shit hit the fan and power was down for 3 days, everybody would be back to the 1800s. And it's like, motherfucker, the power's been out in Houston for longer than that. And it's not back to the 1800s or like the dark ages or whatever these fucking idiots think, which is funny because then you point out things like how the power grid is not 200 years old. So it's like,
I mean, if the Dark Ages were legit just like a modern city that didn't have electricity.
Right.
It seems so absurd when I say it out loud, but I guess it's real.
But also as if places don't have generators and like, I don't know, man. The way these people think is like very childish, and it seems so trite to say it like that, but I can't really think of any other way to say it without being really mean. Like that's the nicest way I can say it.
You know, there was like I think there was this period of time, I believe it was called the 90s, where people just called people dumb or stupid if people were being dumb or stupid.
I think they used another word.
Oh, that too. They used a bunch of words in the 90s.
But definitely use the R word.
Yeah,
we don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, we know that that's a little too intense for most people. I think dumb and stupid are pretty, you know, that should just be fair game again. When someone's being dumb or stupid.
Well, but the irony of that is like those are still ableist slurs that have adopted new meanings where it's like, you know, I guess theoretically somebody who's dumb wouldn't be able to like say anything about it. So it's like one of those ableist slurs that you're not going to get any pushback on because the people who would push back can't. And that's where like, I don't know if I feel like other people have pushed back on the slur in the past, but that's why I'm like, on the one hand, certain words should obviously be on the table, but on the other hand, we can get better at describing the intellectual deficiencies that get oversimplified into words like dumb or stupid, where I'm like, oh, we could get really creative if we want to discuss like right-wing intellectual deficiencies. And that's where I'm like, you know, it's not even just limited to right wing, but it's really easy to attack them because they have so many intellectual deficiencies. And some of it goes.
We could go after the people that buy like insane cars and then give it the juice like on the off ramp and then fly into traffic, that's just dumb and stupid.
I mean, but I would bet, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet money that most of those 99.99% of the people that do that would happen to be right wing. It's not like causal correlation.
There's probably a very strong cultural correlation. Yeah.
Because I know as like a person who's like the farthest on the left, as I get older, I know I'm painfully aware of the notion that I can die at any time. So I'm not trying to like put myself in stupid positions of like, oh, I'm just gonna go 100 miles an hour for no fucking reason because
oh my
I'm
goodness, you just said the
about my
coolest
penis
word.
size. And
You just said the coolest word. It's like the opposite of superposition, kind of. It's stupid position. it's it's when like something is intrinsically unique in all of the cosmos, in all of existence, and that's when stupid shit happens.
Oh yeah, and
Stupid position.
and I try to avoid these people like the plague because they're when you're around them and you're trying not to die just in general, it's very obvious when those people who don't care about it. It'd be different if them not caring about themselves only affected them, but the way that they're reckless, it affects other people. And so these are the people that like send cars flying into buildings and like end up in the car wrecks that no one should ever be in
a vehicle on the second
if it's
floor
like
of a building.
a Michael Bay film.
Bayhem. Pure bayhem.
Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that video of a car. It hits like a dirt off. It's not like a ramp or anything. It's like a dirt embankment and it goes flying high enough that it could have hit like the power lines, but it ends up in a tree just luckily. And it's like sometimes people will have heart attacks and or like pass out from that's also reckless where I'm like if somebody's like diabetic and they still insist on driving even though they don't have to because like other people could drive them and they could wait or like some shit where I'm like those people it's a different type of recklessness where they want to like it's an ableist recklessness where people don't want to identify as being disabled and so they continue to do the things that they shouldn't be doing because their disability is like a point where they're putting everybody at risk by continuing to like pretend like oh my blood sugar can drop at any time and I could just like pass out like
drink
the people who
Gatorade. Holy shit.
I mean, but Gatorade wouldn't work because they have fucking diabetes and they need actual like insulin shot because they can't process sugar. So like, no, Gatorade wouldn't work. That would actually make it worse. So like, this is, and if those people haven't gotten that shit diagnosed and they're trying to self-medicate with Gatorade and they're like type 1 or type 2 or type both diabetic, that like, they don't know because our healthcare system sucks and they can't go to the fucking doctor and they insist on going to work because they have to.
Wait, which is the type of diabetes where they overproduce insulin and they need insane amounts of sugar to stay alive?
I don't know off the top of my head, honestly. Like, it's like the issue is like you can have insulin resistance and then in the process overproduce insulin. So then it's like you get both the effects of both. So like your insulin production's out of sync and your body is resistant to insulin. So
hyperinsulinemia.
Like, yeah, and it's like this is the problem with people
associated with type 2 diabetes.
Getting in situations where like they can't get these things accurately assessed, but they're also like in a situation where they have to keep going. So then it's like, yeah, I'm just going to get on the highway, potentially type 2 diabetic, no insulin, no fucking blood glucose meter, no idea where my blood sugar is at. And I'm going on the highway fucking 10 miles over the speed limit because I'm irritated, because my blood sugar is out of whack, because I don't know my proper blood sugar, and my attitude is, and I've been seeing these commercials. Oh, I'm hangry. I eat a Snickers, so I spike my insulin yet again. I drink some fucking Gatorade, spike my insulin yet again. So then my shit's out of whack, and my attitude is out of whack, and I don't go to the doctor. And so this is like a ticking time bomb of somebody who's like self-medicating on some shit you shouldn't really self-medicate for, where that's like probably more often the situation in America than not. And then these people are told, oh, we have the fucking best healthcare system in the world. So then it's like another added layer of like, because they have been propagandized into this mental cushion of the best healthcare that they don't have access to, then they continue these poor behaviors, because then they can just like, oh, if they pass out behind the wheel and get into a wreck, they'll just go to the hospital and the hospital will take care of it. Because it's like, in their minds, the hospital is like a save point that everybody can get to, even though you haven't like ever visited the doctor and gotten a checkup to know what your vitals are.
They
so
NPCs?
You don't even know what you're basically they're operating like NPCs, thinking they're the main character, but not wanting to do the main character maintenance. Because the issue is, if you've ever played an RPG, you gotta grind. You gotta grind your character. You gotta, in a lot of cases, some of these like Shenmue, you'll be doing like,
oh my God,
an actual job. You have to go fucking practice martial arts. The most in-depth
Shenmue
RPG
has a really, well, it used like an advanced Virtua Fighter fighting system. It was really complicated, but it was so fun once you figured it out.
But also,
it was
you have to
it was
like
writing in
eat
cursive
and sleep,
yeah.
and read your journal, and like the only way to figure shit out is if you read your journal and like figured out what had happened, and you're like, oh, these people. It sometimes games will just spoon feed you the way to go. This is the exact opposite. And by the third installation of that game, it was like to the point where you literally had to get a job and work this job in like a tedious, it wasn't even fun, because it's like at that point they're doing they're full on simulation where they're like, this isn't about fun. This is about, if you do the job for 8 hours or for however long you have to do it, then once you go and cross the bridge, you're going to stop and appreciate the flowers and look at the different colors in the flowers, because otherwise you don't appreciate that, because it's just background until you've been chopping wood for like what feels like hours, but it's really like, 10 or 20 minutes. And then you like have to go run an errand for some old lady in the village or some old man or some kid in the village. And then in the process, you're like, oh, let me stop and look at these flowers, because I've just been looking at fucking my hands chopping wood all day. And I'm like, I feel like I'm supposed to be learning something, but it's really just about the journey and not about the destination. And in this case, it's like, if
you got to
not,
learn to stop and reflect on the digital flowers that you can't
for sure
smell.
But if you're not in that mindset, it's going to feel like a punishment. And further, it don't matter if you get to the end in reality, but you're never even going to get close to the end if you don't like have that kind of mindset going into that type of game. And so when people go around life not having that type of mindset, let alone they're going to play, like, this is why, to me, when people play games and then they give a review about it and they're supposed to be influencers, I want to know how they approach life and these games, because I'm not going to take a lot of their opinions in the first place, but a lot of them approach life like NPCs, and then they play the game and they're like, "Oh, this game sucks." And it's like, "Well, you didn't play it right. You didn't play it the way you could have played it." And so like I'm so mad about how Forspoken specifically got shat on as a game because you have all these people operating like NPCs and then they don't give this game a chance for various reasons. The main being it's like a black a black British woman at the main as the main character pretending to be a black New York street person. So on the one hand, it's like blackface because the media does this a lot of times where they'll take like Idris Elba and be like, "Oh, now you're gonna play a thug from fucking Baltimore," or like you're gonna play one of Tyler Perry's stupid fucking characters from Atlanta, and you have to put on an accent. And then we're gonna take somebody from Atlanta and make them pretend to be somebody from the
Leicestershire.
Exactly. Exactly. We're gonna take Andre 3000 and have him play Jimi Hendrix because we like to fuck with people's perception.
Well, he kind of looks like Jimi Hendrix.
Here's the thing. They don't just do this to black people. Black people are the only ones that are really the most vocal about it. Because Brandon Lee did some weird makeup. I'm not just going, he's not the only one. Like if you go look at, especially in the terrorist era, a lot of the people who were supposed to be Arab were like Cuban or fucking Mexican or like.
Oh yeah, they just put an orange filter on scenes they get from Mexico to make it look burnt to look like the Middle East.
No, not even that, but the people who were playing these parts where they were like, it would just be the most stereotypic Arab Muslim terrorist shit where the only lines they get were like Allah Akbar and then the fucking bomb goes off and you're like, ooh, this feels super racist. This feels also very Islamophobic. I don't know what I just saw. And then you realize like, oh, it's like not a Muslim person or not an Arab playing that. It's like some dude named Juan or Enrique, and it's like Hollywood doesn't fucking care who takes because then I mean let's go we ain't got to go back too far to be like what was it Breakfast at Tiffany's, you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying, where it's like I feel like it got better but then you would get shit with like Chang on Community where it became the joke but they did it anyway where it's like I don't know how many times
Chang
yeah where I'm like I don't know how many times they're going to do that in modernity and have it not be the joke. But also, how many times they're going to do it in modernity and have it be the joke? Because this gets to the issue with what Dave Chappelle was talking about in that, like, after a while, certain things become hacky, and it's like, you shouldn't do this. Like, it almost feels like it's part of some humiliation ritual when you're, like, making people do these things, and it's not, maybe they don't know, but they should know it's not funny at this point because it's been done so many times. Where it's like, yeah, like Korean people shouldn't be playing Chinese people and vice versa. And nobody else should be playing Korean or Chinese people. Definitely not anybody else.
Also, can we get rid of like just bad accents in science fiction? No, if they're going to speak English, then nobody needs to be speaking with a bad Korean accent or a bad Japanese accent or a bad Chinese accent in space.
Then you get Aquafina.
She doesn't need to be in space either.
Come along and was speaking black accent, and so then once she went mainstream, just like shed her black accent, and now she's like, I feel like Asian people hate her for being the same sort of minstrel shit to Asian people that she was doing to black people before. And like, because it was about black people, Asian people were like, oh, it's okay, you know. But now that she's doing it towards Asian people, everybody's like, fuck Aquafina, get her the fuck out of here. And it's like, nobody likes Aquafina except for white people now. And so because Aquafina is willing to like tap dance for any audience that's willing to throw the money at her, and it's like she may be the last of that mainstream type house raccoon. Because like nobody likes those people anymore. I think the issue is because you got the people like Drake, where somebody who's willing to come in and co-opt an entire group's identity and then just like completely slather it in mayonnaise for the white audience to like get rid of any possible spice that would have been associated with the previous iteration. As long as those people weren't getting ostracized openly from the communities they were stealing from, they got away with it. But now Drake's getting ostracized. Now Aquafina is getting ostracized. So they can't really come in and do this shit anymore. So I'm like wondering how it's like, I feel like mainstream studios are kind of like not, they are shutting down in some cases, but they kind of have lost their capacity to do that culture vulture thing that it definitely was not exclusive to black people. So like anybody who has culture in America, vultures are going to come and steal that shit and try to exploit it and via capitalism. So
it's all just some kind of cosplay that people can go and, you know,
exactly
do cosplay tourism.
And so
spend money, do this thing, dress up like a cowboy.
I've like growing up in the era where that was like peaking, but also the counterculture against it was peaking. So I could see both sides, and I'm like participating in both sides. Like in I would say rave culture is definitely part of counterculture when mainstream cosplay vulture was peaking, but then rave scene succumbed to the same vulturism in a way that like allowed it to be packaged and sold as a product, but the spirit of Plur and the counterculture that created it didn't go away. It just like migrated to other places. So I feel like this counterculture spirit moves and migrates, and sometimes it's in like multiple locations and sometimes it's heavily concentrated. But seeing it I saw it get stamped out, and knowing the story of Footloose and knowing the story of punk rock and knowing the story of the rave scene, I can see like with the counterculture, you get the negative. Like I would say the drugs and all of the like lawlessness aspects are the negative. They come with it, but they aren't necessary for those things to be counterculture, but they just get identified with it and then become the excuse to stamp those things out or to like water them down. And so seeing this happen in different areas, I was able to understand the notion of like genres and the formulas that capitalism tries to put on things, whether it's for television or for music or for comic books or for video games. They try to take everything and make it into a formula and put it into a genre so that they can package it and exploit that genre until it's just completely tapped out. And so you have these like first person shooters now become first person slashers, now become first person magic, or then it's like they have to like exploit every aspect of a genre to the point that I know you remember when electronic music was hitting like peak genre and they had a genre for everything. Drum and bass had 1,001 genres. House music had 10,000 genres. Trance fucking had its own set of genres. Like everything had been so formalized and exploited that then after a while everything became EDM. And so seeing
The collapse
the, like,
into one genre,
right,
one
that's
genre
exactly
to
what
classify
happened.
them all.
So seeing the like fractal expansion of genres in capitalism's attempt to exploit everything collapse into one, that's where I see that's the eventuality of that approach. And you see it like once you see it and recognize it, then you're like, oh, this is like how capitalism works, whether it knows it or not. And like then you can start to recognize it in other venues, whether it's like the National Football League or the National Basketball Association. Or
When
the Ultimate
Universal
Fighter
created the
Championship.
internal genre of electronica so they could sell packaged electronic music, that was like the model.
Yep.
And then
I
from
mean,
there,
but they didn't invent that model. It's like
no, that was just like the model expressing itself. They created the
Right,
the
exactly,
genre of
exactly.
electronica, and that's how you knew somebody didn't actually listen to electronic music.
And so seeing this like over genreification of electronic music that is just the model manifesting itself in a way where my experience allows me to identify it, allowing me to then identify elsewhere, then is why I start to extrapolate in ways like I'm not anti AI so much as like with the capitalist model, it's just not viable. And so there are certain things where like also when I was a kid, I think I must have been maybe between 7 or 9. And I don't know who said it. And it may have just been like popular knowledge, but it was like, oh, I know what was happening. Bell bottoms were coming back into style. And then people were like, oh, things go in 30-year cycles. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm really into comic books, so I can like collect these comic books. And if this 30-year cycle thing is true, then at least some of them should be like worth something just based on that notion. And in certain cases, it was true in the idea of like the 30-year cycle isn't why things become valuable. But what I learned is that in the previous 30-year cycle, a bunch of people who had collected comics had their collections thrown out. It was like a big thing that happened. And it's because of there's a couple things that happened. It was like the Comics Code Authority came in and they were driven by like far right Christian group that it was what's it called? The like moral authority or moral majority or something.
Oh yeah, the moral majority.
Yeah, and whenever they came, they were like going around to different media and different areas and trying to like pseudo Christianify things up, and like things like voodoo and zombies. Then comic based on the Comics Code Authority, you couldn't say shit like that in the comics, and in the process, a bunch of parents were prompted to like throw out their what had been their kids' comic books, but were like, in a lot of cases, now adults, but their comic books were stored at their parents' houses for various reasons, whether it was like, oh, they were gone off to college or gone off to war or like just moved out and just like left their childhood stuff in their parents' house, basically in storage as storage, but then like the parents were actively pushed to throw out a bunch of comics. And so those people in their irrational nostalgia started buying up the comics that got thrown out on the secondhand market, and then they spiked the value of comic books. And like a similar thing had happened with like baseball cards, but just not nearly as much. So it's like in the process, comic books and sports cards shoot up in value and like collectability. And then you get the antique roadshow and people start trying to do this with everything. And it's like, it happened with classic cars. It happened with like just general antiques that were not, okay, let me say, general old things that were then classified as antiques because they were air quote rare because nobody wanted them before, but they were identified as being unique because they just, again, when people don't want something, that can be a cause of it being rare. So it's like this happening across all these different areas allowed for capitalism to like make all these markets seem like they were different markets, but they're all the exact same model. And so eventually this middleman model of like finding things, making them feel like they're rare and exploiting them got exhausted in itself. And so it doesn't work on its own anymore. So like just going in and buying up all the supply of something doesn't guarantee that it's going to shoot up in value. So this is where a lot of investments end up falling through because that model doesn't even work anymore. So like we're at a point where I feel like AI might be the last frontier of that model being attempted because it's so unprofitable and like they just can't find anything profitable in it yet. I don't think they're gonna find anything profitable in it ever.
I don't think it's going to have broad consumer applications beyond what it already does. But I think
Right,
within like in the realm of creatives, like within music as a tool, it's proven itself to be pretty useful in the right hands. And of course, like any tool, when abused, it just generates, I mean, just churns absolute garbage. But occasionally, there's like an artist will, or a software developer will integrate some kind of AI feature into their plugin or into the core of their software, and it'll make for an addition to that tool set that is actually pretty useful when used judiciously and very tastefully and almost transparently, so that you don't even realize that it's there. That's kind of cool. And for the example of like video, I have yet to see any kind of video that makes me say, yeah, this is going to replace humans in front of cameras. Whether motion capture and CGI, it might improve CGI, it might improve editing. There might be a lot of improvements, but I think a lot of these things are still, they're so far down the pipeline that any attempts to monetize it now is wasting time and ruining it for everyone else later, because it's just not mature enough. It still isn't mature enough. And I'm not sure it can be mature enough. That
said, let me ask you, I feel like you have at least one thing in your mind as an example. Can you name the examples of where that technology has been applied in music and it's memorable enough for you to name it without looking it up right now?
So
Like you don't have to know the artist or the person,
Oh no, I'm
but
not
like
actually thinking about artist. Actually, I'm thinking of an entire software platform. So, Isotope, they've been making like spectral analysis software and mastering software, uh, audio processing software for decades now, it seems, and they've been using AI. Well, they're calling it an integration of AI so that they can do like room analysis or spectral analysis or spectral editing. And so that kind of stuff is actually pretty useful at like at a production scale. But I don't think that that's the kind of thing that's going to appeal to the person who's fondle slabbing their way through life as an NPC so they can collect tokens to buy more image generation. I don't think I think that's like a NASA level tool for the astronomer, or no, the astronomy enthusiast that just likes to lay out on a blanket and stare at the night sky. I don't think that the AI revolution is actually for the mainstream consumer of any kind beyond like, how do I search better, Google, or like the stuff that Cortana or Siri or whatever Android wants to use right now. Hey Google, like none of those things are actually gonna get that much better than they already are, because the average user doesn't need much more than that. But for a video editor, somebody who wants to do some complex scripting, that might be a useful tool because they already know how to say, I want to do these things. I just need to figure it out. And the AI might be able to help them. Maybe if it's trained on the right kind of data sets. But that's like so niche. I just don't think it's a mainstream tool. I think it's the kind of thing that could help in like analyzing data, maybe, but maybe not, because I've seen plenty of examples of AIs running beyond their token length and then just outputting gibberish, and that's not the kind of thing that a mainstream consumer is going to want to deal with. They don't want gibberish. They don't want hallucinating AIs generating who knows what. They want confidence that these things are going to deliver, simple answers that they can consume. And that's not profitable. It's just more of Google. It's super advanced Google. Bing with a different accent. Alexa by any other name.
well, and that does seem like the main use of it, in that people just seem to be using it for Boolean searches to get natural language responses. And I'm like, you don't need AI to do all that. And so they'd be better off writing program specific or function specific programs to like yield that result in the way that chatbots are written. Because if you just like let them learn, then you'll eventually have to come in and fix it when it becomes racist. So like you're better off just starting off trying to make it anti-racist than having to come in and fix it, because most of the time they're too far gone.
Yeah.
They like become full-on KKK bots when you release them to the internet. It's just inevitable. Like they're gonna hate every minority, and they're gonna be vocal about it as soon as they hit the internet.
Yeah. Why is it that the demons are always chasing after like, you know, children of color? AI is really weird. And why is it that all the women look like they're from anime or porn? Like even the AI renders of like Marvel and DC superheroes, they look like more from porn than ever before.
You gotta ask where they've been scraping their
I
material.
I don't I don't I'm not sure I want to know. This is one of those like, do I really want to know how the sausage is made kind of moments. Because some of the AI stuff that I see, some of the image generation is really cool. Some of it is great at doing really surreal, mind bendy stuff. And then some of it is very clearly just a study of some anime. And I'm not really I'm not interested in looking at that because most of that stuff doesn't actually have a story. Or if it does have a story, it's not obvious. I've yet to see like an anime, or no, sorry, an AI generated comic that can keep me interested for more than, a few just images, because very rarely does that stuff maintain continuity long enough to feel like it's all in the same universe. I don't think that illustrators or visual artists have anything to worry about with AI until
No.
they start using the technology, and maybe that's the group of creatives that's going to unlock like image generation or image augmentation or image whatever AI image enhanced stuff. I think that might be the creative group that really is able to take advantage of it, but not the casual Facebook user that's spending real world dollars on Dolly. And I don't even think that like I think we're actually getting very close to the point where the self-hosted AI is just like this fantasy. Nobody's going to get to have their own Jarvis because the processing power required for it is just insane. Have fun spending $80,000 on GPUs and another $120,000 on just the motherboard to mount them. I don't know anyone who like even fantasizes about having a workstation like that. I mean, that's like a beyond workstation. Like a machine with four H100s. That's just like, is it even possible? But that's the thing is I don't think that AI is even going to exist at the individual level the way that it does now here in like 10 years. It'll all be in the cloud somewhere. The only ones that we can load on our own, they're just going to be like research AIs. They're not going to be very powerful because they're all running in like a closed loop. Like that's the realm of institutional AIs. They might be a part of a larger like cluster of AIs that connect with a school's infrastructure. But but even then, I don't think that that's going to be able to compete with like some of these giant. I'm not even sure. I guess they're still data centers, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah,
That's all. That's all there are, and that's why this whole thing is absurd because they're just making gigantic fucking data centers that are pushing them over their carbon neutral limits, making them go back into the red for carbon usage, and it's still not doing the things that they need it to do. The best it can do is like almost there.
man, if I could just like install a local server on any of my computers that would function as the primary backup node of my mobile device, that would save like a lot of of trouble actually. I mean, it's not like Apple doesn't provide me with a piece of software that I can use to completely back up, create backups of my mobile devices that I can restore all the time. And if I ran that software on my computer regularly, it would back up all of my stuff anyways. It's not like that doesn't exist. I think that there's just a general level of like blase. I don't even care about it that much. I'll just get another phone kind of deal where the average user is just storing all their data on their previous device, and they when it's time to update, they just get a new device, expecting to be able to plug that thing back in and get their photos off of it at some point if they can remember the password. And I think that that's like, I mean, obviously there are people who break the phones. I've known people who've gone through like, 4 phones in a year, and just because they're not careful. And obviously that person is at risk for losing all of their images. But I also know people who keep phones for years and don't update every cycle, let alone multiple times in a year. I think most people actually update their phones because they run out of space on their phone, not because they have issues with the cloud. I mean, I was on a gigabit internet plan with Comcast not too long ago, and I changed it down to a 300 megabit per second plan because when I did all of my analysis, like even at full load, we never needed more than like 250 megabytes per second down, and so having 4 times that was just obscene. I mean, maybe if there's like a building or a house that's like streaming 4 8K streams simultaneously, but
Yeah, you really have to.
who does that? I mean, wait, I got it. If I was running like a Call of Duty server and had to have like a bunch of information coming in and going out all the time, I probably would have needed a heftier data plan, actually.
Yeah, you really got to be using a lot, like multiple games, like a full-on LAN, or not even LAN party, but like people,
A
enough
VLAN
people.
party.
Yeah, exactly.
with a VPN VLAN party. Guys, we're going up against a squad in Baltimore today. Let's be on it. Everyone synchronize your stopwatch.
I mean, on that note, esports are now part of the Olympics.
Yeah.
So I feel like that shit will be more and more common.
Yeah. I mean, breakdancing became a sport, so.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. There was some controversy. Some drag performers in Paris did some kind of reproduction of The Last Supper.
But it wasn't The Last Supper.
But it wasn't The Last Supper. and a bunch of people are complaining that it's like an affront to Christianity, but the Olympics aren't a Christian event, right?
No,
it started in ancient Greece.
Well, and what's funny was when like people were like saying it was The Last Supper, I started counting the people in the image. I'm like, okay, first off, is way more people on whatever they're doing. Obviously, like if you don't know the image off the top of your head, you can like look at it and assume there's some sort of like common threads with The Last Supper, but just counting the number of people present, you're like, oh, this is clearly not the same number of people in The Last Supper. They're not in the same positions. The crown in the drag version is not the same type of halo that they use in any sort of representative image of Jesus ever, let alone what's in The Last Supper. So like it's a stretch that they tried to make it about themselves, but it's just further proof that Americans, and specifically Christian Americans, are the least media literate people on the entire fucking planet. And it's largely because they relegate themselves to only reading the King James Bible, not understanding that that wasn't even the original language of the people in the Bible. And I assume they all think those people had like Oxford accents and spoken English because they're just fucking the least informed mammals. I won't even put them in because I have like a nephew that can't speak, and I don't want to put them in the same species as him because he's way smarter than them. And it's like, I we have some pigeons. I know the pigeons are way smarter than these people, even though the pigeons can't speak English. So I'm like, the levels of ignorance and lack of intelligence that these people have is like interspecies. Like we got to go to like I don't even. I feel like single cell amoebas may have more intellect than these people who call young people snowflakes, but then go on this still ongoing campaign about a misinterpreted image that they thought was about them, and it wasn't actually about them. But also the same people who, when the French people were actually going after Muslims, just drawing offensive images of Muhammad for no fucking reason except to like antagonize Muslims. These people were laughing at it and making fun of the Muslims for being offended. So I don't I don't want to hear it from these Christians.
I just when I saw the pictures, I just thought like, wow, that looks like a I don't know, it looks like a Monty Python thing. It didn't really make sense to me. I don't pay attention to the Olympics though. This is like one of the first things I saw.
Nobody fucking does. Nobody does. This outrage is fucking fabricated, just like the same outrage from the people who claim they saw the slap and the people who claim they saw Janet Jackson's nipple. They didn't see it then. They didn't see it now. None of these people were watching the Olympics live. That's why the threats of boycotting are so. Anytime they threaten to boycott, it always rings hollow because we all know that they weren't fucking watching in the first place.
And why isn't anyone worried more that this looks like the Hunger Games than? I'm serious. It really looks like the Hunger Games. There's a scene of a parade walking up to the Eiffel Tower and it's surrounded by people and people are wearing crazy outfits.
I mean, I doubt that's accidental either. I haven't seen the Hunger Games, but I doubt that shit's accidental. Like they had a fucking Marie Antoinette with her head in her lap as part of the ceremony, and all these Americans are like, this demonic imagery because they don't know who fucking Marie Antoinette is. So they thought that was like
they should all
demonic
thank
imagery.
her for letting them eat cake. God. French can't celebrate anything, can they? I wonder how long it'll be before they host the Olympics again. Because
I mean, the Summer Olympics or winter? Because
summer. Where are they? What's the
probably 20 years. So wasn't it like 90 or I guess maybe 30 years? This 30-year cycle, full circle. Because the last time I think it was 92.
Let's see, host cities. List of Olympic host cities.
Because I think, oh no, it was Barcelona. Not because 96 I think was Atlanta. Yeah, Atlanta.
Let's see, we're gonna get Los Angeles, Brisbane, Australia. Huh.
I could. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of a Winter Olympics. That might be. That's probably yeah.
Okay, here we go. Olympics for the next 26 and 28 and more future games. This isn't a list. Oh, here we go. It ends in Paris.
Oh well, I mean, they don't always have the bids finalized, so they may be making bids still for 28.
Oh yeah.
Um, because I think, fuck, wasn't the Japan like down to the last year before they got it? I thought it was like really close.
They're going to be back in Salt Lake City in 2034. They're going to do the French Alps in 2030. Milan Cortina in 2026. Those are the winter games. And then the summer games are going to be Los Angeles in 28 and Brisbane in 32, looks like.
But
Well,
yeah, when's the last time you watched the Olympics
let's see.
or anything remotely even affiliated with it?
Secondary news channels, probably. I don't know. There aren't that many like fail videos about Olympics, so I'm not probably not gonna watch that stuff.
I remember when they had the Olympic triple play or whatever. I forget what it was called, but you could watch like up to 3 events at a time, but it was like extra. You couldn't, it was like pay-per-view, but they had some sort of I want to say like extra interface.
I think the last Olympics that I remember were in Utah, and that was a winter game. And the last, I don't remember the summer games. I remember reading about that Phelps guy breaking all sorts of records because he's got crazy physiological structure that allows him to swim faster. Also that he smoked weed and almost got in trouble for that. But then a few years later, people are getting in trouble for smoking weed again.
So apparently the triple cast was in the 92 Olympics and it was experimental, which is like, I don't know how we got it then because you had to have like a special 3 button, which is, this doesn't, I had, Indiana was definitely like, it definitely still is a marketing test region, but like, I feel like I know in our neighborhood there was we lived in an actual same neighborhood as a think tank, so I'm like I feel like there was some crazy shit happening in Indiana in terms of the testing, um, but like the idea that I don't know how the fuck we ended up with this shit, but
maybe it was like a promotion that was going on for the local cable company.
Maybe, yeah, but like, that's what I mean, like. It would have been because Indiana's a test market, so they were trying to see if this shit was going to catch on nationally, and so it was a huge financial failure, which is why they never did it again. But this is like pre-internet becoming a wide, like, you couldn't really watch shit on the internet at all.
Man, that was like right during the era of like people getting burned cards for their satellite systems.
Right.
They're trying to compete with that.
Yeah. Man. So that's interesting, which is why. Okay, so I'm starting to remember the dream team was huge. So like, I think because it was like the first time that the professionals had been allowed to play in the basketball league or in the Olympics for basketball instead of the college team. That's why people were suddenly interested in the Olympics in 92.
But yeah, because they wanted to watch Michael Jordan dunk on everyone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But also Michael Jordan play with like Larry Bird and fucking Magic Johnson on the same team, and in the process be the absolute. That's why they were called the Dream Team. So
Yeah.
they weren't called that for nothing. But then they tried to reproduce it, and it just didn't quite. I think other teams got better, so they just weren't blowing teams out of the water the same, and so the viewership just kind of tapered off, I guess maybe. Um, but that's the last time I can remember being actively interested in the Olympics. But I also remember at least one time when everybody was really interested and you would just go places and it was on, and like I went somewhere and like there was a fucking wrestling, Olympic wrestling match on, and everybody was watching it, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I don't remember what. I feel like it was like a dentist's office or something, like a doctor's office, but like I don't remember exactly where it was.
Of all places
But it was
to watch
like
wrestling.
exactly, it was like somewhere where you definitely wouldn't be watching wrestling normally. So I was like intrigued that even the sport of wrestling was getting people's attention. So that I don't remember what year it was, but that's like the last memory that's like the last explicit memory I have of the Olympics, where I'm like, World Cup's way different, as much people really get into the World Cup still, and I always kind of have. So like the idea that a bunch of these people who are claiming to boycott the Olympics were, I don't know if they were ever watching it. Maybe if they were alive during the Dream Team, maybe they watched it then, but they weren't watching now. So like that's why these types of, when they try to do cancel culture, it doesn't work because they're not actually consumers or customers of the thing that they want getting canceled. Whereas like right now, Drake, he's getting canceled because the people who actually listen to him are no longer listening to him, which is like, I don't know if anybody ever thought that shit was going to happen with Drake, let alone you look at Eminem and he wants it to, he's like trying to get it to happen because, if the people who you're antagonizing get riled up, then it galvanizes the right wing behind you. Whereas like Eminem the kids aren't falling for his troll. So the right wing can't point at anybody and be like, look how much Eminem pissed these kids off with him making fun of trans people, making fun of blind people. It's because like nobody's listening. So it actually looks sad when those people do it. Like you need somebody to be upset to point at and be like, haha, you mad. Otherwise, like it just looks sad when there's nobody actually getting upset.
I mean, how long did it take for people to get over getting mad at the internet? Is the internet finally getting better at filtering itself out?
Kind of, because
It seems like with every subsequent generation of new internet denizens, like the initial wave of getting pissed off about things seems to be shorter and shorter every time. Maybe the algorithms that govern what I see on the internet have finally tuned in and stopped showing me crap. That's not true. It still shows me plenty of crap. Maybe it's showing me more stuff that I actually want to see. And it's becoming more transparent. or less transparent, more opaque about how they do it, and they're just giving me better stuff, and it just seems seamless. Maybe that's the benefit of AI that we're not really appreciating, is because it's just behind the scenes, and we can't even see it. I mean, that's me being really optimistic, of course, but like right now, I just opened up Google News, and it's almost all like science and medical technology updates. Technology updates.
Okay, this is not necessarily breaking news, but it's like definitely a tangent in that at San Diego Comic-Con they announced there's going to be a Star Trek live action comedy series about like non-Starfleet civilians. And this has been tried before in kind of various venues. And one of the more recent ones was like Powerless, where it was about obviously powerless civilians, but in the DC universe. And I feel like it was just right before its time, and the main actress they had just was not likable. So there's a couple like Danny Putty was on the show, and Rob Funches, where it's like they could have made them the stars, but they were just like side. Instead, they had some no name actress that they were trying to make big, and she just wasn't, like, she had no charisma. So it like they sunk an amazing premise for a show trying to like they tried to create an industry plan, and I can't even remember the woman's name. But it was like she came in and was out because everybody who watched the show unanimously did not like her. Where I'm like, I needed to look up this because it was like Vanessa Hudgens. Really? Wow. That's crazy. They totally had to rebrand her then. Yeah. What year was this? Okay, 2017. Oh, okay. Cause then okay, so what happens sometimes is people will have like a career in like kids media, and I'll have no idea, and like I'll see them as adults and like not know that they were on like Disney Channel or some shit. And so like to me it's like they kind of come out of nowhere. So she was like a Disney person. Um so it seemed like, yeah, she went damn near all the way back to only terrible shit. Not what. Yeah, it definitely, I think Powerless was her big shot based on this list. And so I don't know if that show's failure just made Hollywood think that that type of approach to material wasn't viable, but it was just like
She was in the
such
last
a
two Bad Boys movies. Journey to the Mysterious Island, Sucker Punch, Blondie.
Kelly in Bad Boys.
Oh, so I saw the oh, I remember this chick. She didn't say very much in that Sucker Punch movie. Yeah, no, she's in Bad Boys. Who the hell is she in Bad Boys?
Weapons expert. That's what I'm like. I don't remember. Maybe they cut her scenes because I definitely saw the new Bad Boys movie, and I
Okay,
don't
so
remember
the
her.
scene when Marcus's kid like cleans out the room of Mercs, like that was awesome. That's like the best damn scene in the whole movie. When he like calls up his kids, like get everyone to safety, and he like puts them in the closet and grabs the gun and just kills them all. That was the best scene in that whole movie. It was actually really fun too. I mean, the whole movie is really fun. It's a Bad Boys movie, but I had to rewatch that scene a couple times. It was very impressive, like very well done. Yeah, I don't recall. I don't even know who Kelly is in this movie. Like that. That's as much as I remember of her character.
Right? That's what I'm like. Yeah, I mean, which again, that's not a main role. That's definitely not.
I
Which
mean, apparently it is a main role.
no, no, I'm saying if you can't remember the person, like in a film, they're not like a main role because it's like, okay, for example, you have you seen the Blade movies?
Yeah,
Do you remember Whistler?
Whistler. Yeah, it was what's his name? The he had a
It
music
doesn't
career.
matter.
I
You
can't remember.
remember him because he's a main role. That's
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like, even if they're like a side character, they get if you can remember them, it's because they got enough,
he had the
at
leg
least
brace
enough on
thing.
screen time to the point where you can like retain them being in the film. And that's where I mean, like, I don't it's not about like, yeah, she may have had lines, but if she's in two bad boy movies and we don't know who Kelly is because it wasn't really necessarily like a main character in that in the like layperson context of what I mean. Like, I guess even like I can't hardly remember anything about the third Bad Boys film, so like I'm not even gonna chalk that up to that. But I just saw the fourth one, so like
Yeah, this last one was really fun. It got mind
yeah.
bendy at one point. It was really kind of like out of nowhere. I mean, obviously we're talking about Bad Boys movies. They're action comedies. They're not to be measured against like you know films of different genres. This is not a period piece, although it kind of is a period piece.
Well, in the same way that the new Beverly Hills Cop movie was. And so
Yeah,
I feel like those two films coming out in the same year was kind of serendipitous to be able to compare them in what they did. And I think both of them succeeded in capturing the the Hollywood blockbuster summer film feeling while still acknowledging that they're all old and aging and can't do the same shit that they did in those original films, while then lampooning it and making modern scenes that are meta comedy acknowledging that. So like it would have been sad if they were trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna show my abs and fucking I'm gonna do a sex scene and I'm gonna try to be all sexy and like take it too seriously, but neither film did that because obviously those people are too old to be doing that type of shit. And nobody ever really wanted to see Martin Lawrence in a sex scene in the first place. But like I want to say he did one in Boomerang. I don't remember off the top, but I feel like he did. So like there was a point in his career where I want to say he was feeling himself enough to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm a sex symbol. I'm gonna do a sex scene." And
Well,
like,
Martin Lawrence is actually pretty versatile. Like he gained a bunch of
yeah, I
weight, like
mean,
for that Mind Cage movie where he kind of looked like Forrest Whitaker, and then
he started off in like Spike Lee movies, so it's not like
yeah, I mean he's
you
a
know,
very versatile dude. But it was like I think he did really well. Like his character in this one was the most enjoyable, version of Marcus Burnett that like I can think of. Like he's this that character has matured quite nicely, I think. But again, I can't remember the third Bad Boys movie because it probably wasn't that good.
it definitely wasn't that good. Which is why it took so. I think it feel like it took so long for the fourth one to happen. Because if it was like good, like yeah, it made almost half a billion. If it was good, it would have made $1 billion, and it would have gotten a sequel quicker because that's how capitalism works.
I mean, they waited like a decade to make more than a decade to make number three, and number four came out 4 years later. So maybe, who knows? Will Smith has a lot of money. That's what I know.
Mm-hmm. But I guess even before COVID happened, the theater returns has started to get lower. Um, that's damn. I I'm amazed at what I'm glad Hollywood has readjusted its expectations for what a success is. Um,
There's Hollywood
but
success and then there's
now,
Disney success. And those things
right?
are very
Yeah,
different. But
yeah.
Disney
Which
has
is
like an embedded market that is always growing. It's like you can't. They're always going to have a market. There's always going to be little kids being born. Well, hopefully.
you know what though. I'm seeing I see the problem, and it's very evident with Bad Boys. So the original budget for the first Bad Boys movie was $19 million. Well, at the time, that would have been a lot, but now that's a small budget movie. So like the idea of the movies we have now are wrapped in big budgets that weren't actually what made those films good in the first place. So like,
You
yeah,
can't replace good dialogue with
no, but
crap.
this is
Basically, visual
this
visual
is where
stimulation doesn't replace a good story.
but the attempt at the formula is what happens, and
Yeah.
so they exploit it. They're like, oh, we'll throw more money at it, make it bigger, more explosions, and we'll get more money, and that's not how it works out. Um, sometimes it does work out. So like,
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that Will Smith is driving his personal Porsche, and that's like that's why you only see it in certain scenes. And then when the going gets tough, he's definitely nowhere near that Porsche.
so the second film had a budget of 130 million. So like basically almost a full times 10 increase in budget, but they only got a times two return. So clearly you have a point of diminishing returns on non MCU films in terms of like how much you can just jack into a franchise and this is a clear like you don't get if you put in times 10 the money, you don't get a times 10 return. And seeing the budget, it's like, okay, Bad Boys 3, or I guess 4, fucking 100 million budget, 400 million return. So we're seeing like they can't they can't do the times 10 on the first one because they're putting too much money in and not learning the fucking lesson. Whereas like I wonder, damn, no, they didn't learn either with Axel F because they put 150 million into this movie. So there's no way they definitely didn't make $1.5 billion on Beverly Hills Cop 4 to the point. I don't even know if they're showing the returns because they went damn near straight to streaming. I don't. No way. So yeah, Netflix isn't even publishing numbers on what they made back on Beverly Hills Cop because they probably haven't even made any money. I doubt they've even made money on that yet. And
I
so
mean,
you can't.
how many Beverly Hills Cop fans are actually going to run out and spend money on Beverly Hills Cop 2024? That's like an imaginary market. It's a nostalgia market. And they're going to get a few new viewers from people whose parents like said, "Oh, I remember that movie," or who may have casually heard Eddie Murphy growing up. But I I wasn't even aware that it existed until I was just kind of cruising around the movie channels, and then it's like, oh, look at this. When did this happen? I mean, I'm sure that I read something about it, but it wasn't enough to, leave an indelible stamp on my calendar. Actually, I can't think of any movies right now like that I'm like looking forward to or have read anything about that's making me say, "Oh yeah, like I can't wait for this." I think the last time that happened was with the first Dune movie that came out recently, and then because the second one happened and I just didn't even realize it, and then with Foundation, the Apple show Foundation, which I really enjoyed, but I'm pretty sure is done because it was kind of difficult to follow, and they weren't doing a good job of translating the book after a while. It's just too much source material. I
Well,
think
they are coming out with a TV show.
yeah. It's still in production as far as I know, so I mean I'm looking forward to it, but even that one's fallen off my radar. I know that Lower Decks is gonna get it. We're gonna get the last season of Lower Decks.
Jack Quaid getting all kinds of work. He's in
Oh yeah, well,
My Adventures of Superman.
yeah, and also The Boys.
Oh yeah, that too, obviously. But I was thinking about voice acting.
Oh yeah, just yeah.
Um
He's great. He is great.
yeah, he is.
Like
Um
like the best episode of Lower Decks, or maybe it's a crossover into Strange New Worlds. Whenever the Lower Decks crew walks through the portal and ends up in live action. Like I didn't think it was possible for a human to be as much like their cartoon character. like they really just drew the cartoon after they met him. That's what it seemed like.
yeah. Well, and I didn't think he like looked like Boimler until they put him in live action. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do. Yeah, I guess I see it.
It really does look like
Yeah.
the hair color's wrong, but I know we're getting more Strange New Worlds. I know that Star Trek is relatively safe. Like, there's going to be a Section 31 show, and I think they're doing like a Starfleet whatever it is when they go to when they're cadets. Starfleet Academy show. That those are the only things that are really on, like, even casually. That's not even like active radar. That's just like stuff that I read about and remember because I really like Star Trek.
I mean, in a way, Deep Space Nine is kind of this, except they would get back to Starfleet because a lot of shit takes place in Quarks, where it's like,
Yeah, they should just have a
yeah, a
Quarks
lot
show
of
and be
it,
like Cheers in space,
yeah,
but with phasers and disruptors.
basically,
And
and that's why it was fun though, because
yeah.
I mean, well, the episodes where it's not just completely depressing.
Okay, so
Because
we're
some of the Deep Space Nine stuff is just like,
yeah,
okay,
like 2/3 of it
prepare to
is
be
really
depressed.
depressing.
Yeah.
That was like, I think that's like the most character killing off Star Trek series that exists, because I feel like people die like every episode in that series.
Yeah, once you get towards the war, yeah, they're just not afraid. Like, oh, you like Jadzia Dax? We're gonna kill her off and bring in some Dax you don't know. Spoilers. 30-year late spoilers.
Let's see, in the movies, the original series, holy cow, there were 104,557,180. Anyways, there were a lot of people who died. The animated series, only 49 people died. In Next Generation, including the movies, only 90 billion people died. Deep Space Nine, oh, only 822 million.
I mean, that's in like Stargate. I don't know if you remember season
Oh no, but
one.
this is like the original series includes all the motion pictures, and Next Generation is in all the motion pictures. The Next Generation movies. Deep Space Nine never had any movies to kill off a bunch of planets, so they still got 822 million in just the series.
Well, I don't know if you remember Stargate. At one point, they have the like lens closed.
Oh yeah, where they pulled in
on
the alternate Rodney through the. Oh wait, you're talking about?
right.
Are you talking about SG-1 or Atlantis?
I'm talking about SG-1.
Oh, okay.
But at a point they have the fucking lens closed, but they can't close the Stargate because it may be balls. Somebody's trying to send an attack. It may be fucking dude before that. I forget his name, but regardless of who it is, no,
Apophis?
was it Apophis? Yes, Apophis is like sending people through, and they're just hitting the fucking lens and dying constantly. So there's just this like barrage of like soldiers just hitting the lens and like dying for at least one or two episodes where you're like, as frequently as it's like boom, 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 boom. There's like 3 people dying per second or some shit where you're like, if you extrapolated how many people they killed just over those episodes alone, it's probably thousands. So that's where I'm like, in these science fiction universes, a lot of people used to die in ways where it was just kind of occluded to like not really be obvious as to how many people were actually dying. But if you go back and look, like, yeah, there's like thousands of people dying per episode sometimes. Or like when they had the minefield in Deep Space Nine, and it was just like the regenerating minefield, but like they kept sending Jim Hadar into it just to see if it was still regenerating, and it's like, oh, they were just
entire ships.
Yes.
You know, that's one of those
or when
things
they
that
destroy a Borg cube.
Oh wow, yeah, Borg cubes.
Borg
cubes are huge.
Yeah, that's like
they're like moon-sized objects.
Those are like massive murder events, but it just looks like, oh, we beat the Borg. Like, no, all these people are fucking captive, and you can reverse it. You just don't want to put the time in because each
3,000
individual.
3,000 meters per side is what a Borg cube is built out to, with a volume of 27 cubic kilometers.
And I feel like the spheres are bigger than the cubes.
Sometimes the spheres fit inside the cube.
Oh, right, yeah.
But cubes are big enough for an entire enterprise to fly around inside. So cubes are massive structures, and they only get bigger. Like when the Borg start building those the conduits. Yeah, Borg are crazy. If only we could just get along with them, everything would be so much easier. That's like every planet that has been assimilated, every spacefaring, warp-capable race or species in the galaxies. They're the ones who said, "Well, maybe we can just get along with them," and they're assimilated just like that.
Yeah, there's like 11,000 on each cube.
So, like, I mean, obviously, the Borg are just consumers.
But they're also communist.
Communist consumers. They're the Chinese. Oh. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that China is a dictatorship that utilizes some like weird version of capitalism.
And, I mean, it's statism. Statism.
Yeah.
It's definitely not communist. It's definitely statist, which is like,
but for the last like decade,
kind of similar to the Saudis, except the Saudis have a full-on monarchy. So
yeah, I know, but like for the last like almost 15 years or more, it seems like there's been one party in China. It's all been under Xi Jinping, and so I'm not trying to dive too far into China, but I'm pretty sure that they've just become like a dictatorship. It's the Xi Jinping dynasty. May it last only a few years more.
Right? I feel like he's. Well, it almost seems like
from like from the propaganda that I see from China, it's a lot of China's trying to, demonstrate that they've got shipbuilding capabilities to rival the United States or surpass the United States and all these other technologies that are, put them on the level with United States. It's a lot of China versus United States type propaganda. And of course, I don't believe any of it because I'm also highly indoctrinated into U.S. propaganda.
I mean, but it also feels like it may be a Biden situation where they have like somebody who died years ago and they have multiple people playing him. So there's this like specter of Xi that like is created because this dude is actually multiple dudes.
Ooh, Xi is a construct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, of course. That's where again it's like that's why it feels to me like Biden is dead because Biden is a construct as it's not even.
I mean, obviously, the physical human being Joe Biden is still alive, but the construct of
is
Joe
he?
Biden.
Are you sure? Are you fucking sure? Are you fucking sure?
I mean, you don't think they'd announce some crazy shit like that?
No, of course not.
They just keep the automaton alive, like Mitch McConnell.
No, I don't even think that they would keep the automaton alive. I think they'd have people fucking playing him who'd be willing to get. They might like. The same way Saddam Hussein had multiple people who would play him and like sleep in different places and pretend to be him, you don't think they do that shit in America too? Especially with some fucking 82-year-old man. Because like, I mean, I'm not trying to get too conspiratorial in that I know for a fact that other leaders have done it. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for America to do it in that it makes more sense to do it than not. When the older somebody gets, and the
So there's
more
actually like a conspiracy for the Biden is dead theory that has
I
emerged
know,
within the last
it's
48
a
hours.
joke on the one hand, but on the other hand, when you have okay, he wasn't seen in the public eye for like 5 days because of COVID, or 6 or 7. It was between 5 and 7 days. The next time he makes a public appearance, it's between vehicles for no longer than a minute at a time. And then his speech is 11 minutes. He's bumbling through his speech, can barely talk. And so, on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely an old person that we're looking at, but it may not be Joe Biden that we're looking at to the point. So I'm like, the thing that the super conspiracy theorists are pointing at is like the earlobes, where he has two different earlobes. So if you just reverse the image, it's going to look like
The
the
same
earlobe.
earlobe.
No, it's going to look like different earlobes on the same side, but the image is reversed. So that's why you can't know if somebody's just doing that or not.
Oh, because he's got an
My
asymmetrical
issue,
face too.
right? My issue is when you look at the person who they're putting in front of us, it looks like that person's dying, but it also looks like that person has had some surgery or something, like some work done, maybe in the past, or maybe in the like not near enough recent to be like scar, like still open wounds or anything like that. But like the same, that look happens when you get old. Like your skin starts to look weird and it looks like it may be sewed on or some shit. So I'm like, I definitely know that the person we're looking at could just be an old ass Joe Biden that has aged like fucking milk in the sun in front of our eyes over the last 40 or 50 or whatever, however fucking too long his political career was. But like, it could also not be him, in that that's where he's not even out anymore. He came out for 11 minutes and disappeared again. So that's where, again, I'm like, everybody's so focused on Kamala right now that it's easy to just overlook the fact that Joe Biden, who's by all intents and purposes should have been recovered from COVID right now, if he was capable, should be recovered from COVID and like back out, but that's not what's happening. So like, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not, obviously if you're not with a person, you can't know if they're like running these doppelganger plastic surgery games. But we know that it's happened in other countries, and to the point, like when
And there was
Saddam,
like a what was his name? The movie was called Dave, but it was about a president they had to replace with a facsimile.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was 93. Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver. The president like has a heart attack while he's like boning some floozy, and they had hired this guy to like walk to the limo and wave his hand or something, and they rehire him to pretend to be the president and just act the part, but it starts to fall apart because he starts doing the job. It's actually a fun movie. But man, 93. Like 30 years ago.
Yeah, because I mean, the reason that's even in the zeitgeist in 93 is because it had been rumored about Saddam, but then I think they full on proved it, showing different images of dudes who had like completely different beard patterns and like their heads were different shapes, but like their faces looked close enough as to where it was like if you were white, you'd be fooled, but I mean the dude, and then he full on admitted it because then he was like, "Oh, I don't sleep in the same bed every night. And I like have decoys sleep in the other place." So he like admitted that he had decoys to show that like you couldn't tell which one was him sleeping because the decoys were using his other residences wherever he wasn't. So like knowing that in the 90s, that's where I'm like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that a government with an old ass man who could go at any moment would do that. So like just that as a possibility, I keep it in mind. But then knowing how they used to like W would go running with the press corps every day. Like every day. Not once in a while, like every day. And then they would like be upset because he was out golfing every other fucking day, but he was out. You could see him. There were pictures of him because he was out in public. Same shit with Obama. Obama like out eating at a restaurant, going like with a bunch of Secret Service people, going in some fucking random burger joint. He was out. He would be out and you could see him, and there were enough people taking pictures of him. I think at one point they even like tried to say Obama had decoys because his brother looked just like him. So they were like, or one of his brothers, because I think he had multiple brothers from his dad, like half brothers, but one of his half brothers looked like just like him. So then I think people then got confused about lookalikes, where there were a bunch of people who were getting paid to do like appearances as Obama lookalikes, and I think they were confusing that with like decoys, where obviously not the same thing. But if you're an American and you're Christian, you're not going to understand the difference. So I can see how that mistake gets made by that particular demographic. Not all Christians, but again, American Christians are a special kind of uninformed because of the culture in which they're raised, where the only book they're allowed to read is the King James Bible or the New International Version specifically.
It's tough because the few people that I know that are like that actually walk the walk, they're really not the people that you're talking about. Like
right, because they won't get offended by what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're like not that person, and they're the most Christian people that I know, and it's crazy how like their religion has actually been taken from them in a sense, in name only.
Yeah. Well, it's actually super easy to do that. The hateful ones just make it look hard. Because they're so disconnected from it. It's like yeah, Jesus hung out with literal prostitutes and turned water into wine. Because clearly he wanted people to get fucking drunk. So like
the guy was making
shut the fuck up.
He was making hooch in the fucking bathhouse, and he had some drummers, and it was like he hosted the first raves.
Mind you, we're at a time where people were stupid enough to think that making alcohol is a fucking divine miracle. People are fucking.
What happens if we set this bottle of fruit like in the sun for a while?
We're talking about the lowest of the low, because they don't even talk about how long it took. It may have taken a fucking week. But these idiots are like, it's a miracle. Like, no, he might have just been fermenting some fucking fruit and figured out how to ferment grapes.
Yeah, foot juice.
In an area that
Liquid bread. Stanky liquid bread. Blah. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that the discovery of the process of refining alcohol for consumption was actually a really big deal. I bet that provided like a level of safe to consume water that that large groups of people didn't really have before. Also, it's probably
Well, but
there's probably like
that's
a by it's probably like a byproduct of making something else, like making flour for bread. You take that stuff, the water off of that, and cook it, and it turns into beer. Something stupid.
I mean, partially, but then part of what the issue becomes is like people learn not to bury their dead by the fucking water source or to
Oh my
like
god!
throw their trash away near the water.
So
It's things like that
that
go
stuff is
intangibly.
crazy to me that it still happens because every so often I read about or see a video of some like dude in a biohazard suit going out to some location and taking samples and then be like, yeah, this place is completely contaminated. We need to dig this up and see what's in here. And they find like, a body. And lo and behold, it's like, middle of nowhere USA. And you'd think it'd be some like developing nation, but nope. It's somebody who lives in the modern world who's supposed to have access to some resources about and know better. And like, hey, there's a dead person, come and get it. I don't know about anything about it. Just come take care of this shit. That's what y'all are here for, right? And they just did the dumb thing and buried it. They were stupid, or they killed somebody and they didn't know what to do. And either way, they did something dumb and stupid. Just blows my mind that like it's like, yeah, let's just bury it is still an option. Squirrels bury things, dogs bury things. I try to imagine like the kind of childhood that somebody had where like burying something was like not a flawed option. Every time I've tried to bury something, it either like floated up in the soil because I didn't bury it deep enough, or after burying, trying to recover it, I destroyed it, or I couldn't even find it later. And then there are like the really hardcore versions of that where it's like a time capsule where a thing is a sealed container in another sealed container, and that thing is sealed for a period of time. And I know that I've contributed to time capsules, but I don't know what happened to the time capsules.
Yeah, that was a huge like fad for a while. I don't know. It got to the point where I don't feel like people understood what time capsules were for, and they would just put just like random shit in there. I remember my school, at least one of my schools, if not all of my schools I went to did them where I'm like, man, the pomp and circumstance that would surround them, but then also the like lack of understanding that went along with it. Because then people would like, I remember when time capsules would get opened up and there would be like a big ceremony, and then it would be like some notes from some kids at a school from like 100 years ago, and people were like, "Oh, it's like yeah, that's kind of what it's supposed to be in general, but like."
Yeah, it's like I hope that the Reginald's horse survives the winter.
Right. I hope I don't die from a cold over the winter. And, my 7-year-old brothers and sisters are all dead.
They,
I
fi-
hope I don't die next.
they find a dried up, shriveled raisin version of like an orange.
We haven't discovered penicillin yet, so we're all dying from very, very simple things.
Oh. What's
I
fucked up
got a
about that is
splinter and I might die.
we're on the verge of entering an era where like our antibiotics are going to stop working. Like there are bacteria out there that we can't even fight. That when people get infected, they have to be quarantined and they're made as comfortable as we can make them, kind of thing. And CDC apparently is supposed to be in there like studying that shit. And I'm going to assume that they are, but we're approaching a level of like uncertainty or a place of uncertainty because of the abuse of antibacterial products that aren't actually effective at killing bacteria unless you like saturate your hands in them for 3 minutes. Nobody washes their hands for 3 minutes.
Mm-mm.
Like doctors are the only people who do that stuff, and that's because they're trained to do it.
I thought I was like doing a lot with like my 15, 20 seconds.
Oh yeah, yeah. Imagine you're supposed to get like work up a really like thick lather and like get that stuff all the way up to your elbows practically, and then you got to rinse off without touching anything. And nobody actually does that stuff. Normal people don't. Even though they did, like there's that whole like decade of overprescription of antibiotics where people would get like Z packs because they've got a little bit of phlegm in their cough because it's allergy season. They've got bronchitis because they probably smoke too much weed.
Mm.
Like weird stuff like that. Like, yeah. Lifestyle changes could have prevented a whole generation of people being overexposed to unnecessarily powerful antibiotics. Things that I think that's a hindsight thing. But yeah, like here the next 30 years, 40 years, if something doesn't really change from some of the crap that I've been reading, I guess, like there we can expect a future where a splinter might actually take you to the hospital because you need to get like treated with some like really hardcore like flush to get it all out kind of thing. But maybe not. Maybe we'll get really lucky. Maybe there'll be some kind of like health technology, nutrition breakthrough. I mean, I think that kind of sounds like the cure for diabetes or the cure for cancer, actually. But I don't even think that's possible with like the current like economic model and that we have and the way that everything is commodified or incentivized.
Well, and on that note, this is where the announcement of Robert Downey Jr. coming back to the MCU.
Wait, didn't he die?
Yeah. Yeah, he's coming back as a different character. So this totally feels like we're at the end of capitalism to me because that's where I'm like, yeah, you can't do like all those movies with Robert Downey Jr. have him retire and then bring him back and not seem like as if you're not out of ideas, which is where Disney's out of ideas, the fucking MCU's out of ideas, fucking middlemen are out of ideas, all these like
new mask, same task. Boo.
Yeah.
Doom, Victor Von Doom and Tony Stark did not have the same task. They were very differently, like diametrically opposed. Also, wasn't Doom into a bunch of like magic?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, this is just gonna make those two characters even less nuanced now because now we have the same person.
I mean, this whole time, Victor Von Doom was just like Tony Stark wearing a bad mask and some makeup.
I was afraid about Wolverine and Deadpool appealing to like the most emotionally stunted men, like making them feel like they're experiencing emotions, but also making them like rewarding them for being emotionally stunted and like getting that far in life and not feeling anything except for like fictional people. But now that they're bringing RDJ back, I'm like, oh, this is for sure the result of catering to that group because it hasn't even been long enough for nostalgia to kick in for RDJ, and they're just like already going back to this well. So, man, emotionally stunted people in America are holding everyone back by proxy of capitalism trying to appease those emotionally stunted people and not
They couldn't find
allowing.
They couldn't find anyone else who wanted to do Doom.
Of course they could, but these emotionally stunted people wouldn't go see it because they don't like change and they don't like new things and they don't like new ideas. So in order to appease these emotionally stunted people, got to go back to the same fucking bag that you know works. Try to use the same formula, but just change it just a little bit enough to where it looks different, even if it has the same face.
But they could have had someone like Christoph Waltz be Doom. He would have been amazing as Doom.
Of course. That's, you know. Yeah, lots of people could have been amazing. Hell, even Tom Cruise channeling Les Grossman.
Yeah, Tom Cruise would have been a great Doom. He's already got he's got a big enough head. Like,
yeah.
I keep hoping that it's going to be like a Tropic Thunder moment, and it's not actually Robert Downey Jr. It's somebody else. It's somebody wearing an RDJ mask. I know that's not going to happen. How's this going to work? There are a lot of like Doom and Iron Man interaction that kind of can't happen now. They just screwed up the timeline with like so much by doing this kind of thing. By he's supposed to be like the foil of the Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm. But that's what they're putting him in. So a period piece.
Oh God. On that note, I think we just close on like a low note, sour note. Fucking Doom MCU doing a period piece is like just as sad as this can get.
This is what capitalism. We were supposed to get flying cars. That's what they promised us.
No, we just get RDJ as Doom.
Recycled RDJ as Doom.
Bull.
Exceptional radio.
Exceptional Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.